Honestly, I don't get why everyone hates on the older Call of Duty games as much as they do sometimes. Sure, they aren't the most original or complex games out there, but when you have solid, dumb, fun popcorn entertainment such as these games, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel, do you? But how about we take a look at the game and give it a fair review, shall we? Being released on November 8th, 2011 for all major consoles, I'll be taking a look at the PS3 port of the game. Modern Warfare 3 takes place directly after the events of the previous game, with a few remaining members of Task Force 141 on the run after being labeled as war criminals, while also trying to hunt down and kill Vladimir Makarov as to put a stop to his world-conquering plans. While that is going on, we are introduced to a new team of US Delta operatives, who must secure the Russian-infested city of New York after the Russian invasion of the United States in the previous game. There's also an SAS operative and a Russian federal security agent, both trying to put a stop to sinister plots in their own parts of the story. While each protagonist's story plays out, the entirety of the story all comes to meet each other in a spectacular finale to the series. The game's story is a lot of fun, regardless of the fact that it tries to take its post-Red Dawn style story a bit too seriously for my tastes. Even with all the carnage going on around, it's a story of revenge, and it thankfully never loses focus of the end goal. All the characters tie in well together, and I didn't feel like any part of the story was a real waste of time. It hit the beats well enough that it actually managed to beat the game in one sitting without ever getting bored in terms of the narrative. There was a content warning before you begin the game, just like there was at the beginning of the last game, but man, this one felt so tame in comparison. With all the other stuff that goes on the game, I don't really even see a point for the warning. I actually really like the characters here, even if they didn't have as much personality as most other games would have. The US Delta operatives were likable, and when they teamed up with Captain Price and the other Task Force 141 members, it felt good. I really enjoy the fact that the SAS crew do get a bit of character as well, and they had a tie-in to the first Modern Warfare game, which was fun to see. The game looked decent enough, but in some areas the game looked like something more akin to a late PS2 game or an early PS3 game, rather than when this game actually came out. Characters, guns, and environments suited what was going on, and I thought the new models for the guns were nice for the most part. Thankfully, there were no real pop-in or texture issues, so things looked consistent throughout the entire game. The locations were alright, and I enjoyed them for the most part, but they really started to feel a bit too similar, mostly comprising of stone structures and similar looking corridors. Not to say that there wasn't any variety, it just isn't as prevalent as it was in the previous game's environments. This game was also quite dark a lot of the time, and I don't mean in the themes. Quite a bit of the game was set during the night, or in areas with very little light, and unless you turned up the brightness, it was just hard to see anything. You'll be fighting your way through the absolutely totaled streets of New York and its surrounding skyscrapers, to different cities in Europe and small villages and remote areas, all the way to salt mines and a luxury hotel for the game's climax. You'll be traveling all over the place for the game's story. Standout locations were the Paris Bridge holdout with the Eiffel Tower as a backdrop, and the final shootout up to the top of the hotel. The game has plenty of shootouts and well done set pieces in traditional over-the-top Call of Duty fashion. You'll be shooting your way through waves and hordes of enemies, and I think the question to ask about that is the shooting and gameplay solid? Yes, it is simple, but solid enough for what it wants to set out to do. The guns feel alright, but I wouldn't say any of them have any real weight to them. Shooting is just a bit empty in all honesty, but it isn't bad. It just feels like the same thing in every location. There are a decent variety of weapons to use over the campaign, and they kill things. They do their job. The sound design was really good, especially when I was wearing some headphones. Explosions and gunfire all sounded how they should, and the voice acting for the characters was decent. Characters had voices that suited their appearance and backgrounds, and I really grew to like the characters and their voices, and I really liked how the voice actors did their job. Enemies are the same 2 or 3 bad guys, differently skinned for each location over and over again, and while they go down fairly easy, I couldn't help but notice they had a slightly odd spongy feeling to them in the Spec Ops mode. Enemies aren't always the brightest, but they shoot at you and take cover, so they do enough of a job to provide you with something to fight, although I would never ever say these guys are really good AI. After the main campaign wraps up, there are special ops missions you can play solo or with a friend. These are just repurposed campaign maps with different objectives complete for a good score to unlock more of them. There's also a survival mode, which, while fun for a few rounds, quickly tires as you just get flooded with enemies and have no real goal to complete. These also use reused campaign and multiplayer maps. Speaking of multiplayer, there were no servers at all, at least on the PS3 copy of the game. I waited around for 7 whole minutes to see if I could connect to any sort of game mode, and I had no luck. Overall, the game is alright, and that's about it. It's not spectacular or anything, but I did have a fun time with the 4 hours I spent in the campaign, and some fun with the side stuff the game offers. I think it would be better to enjoy the game with a friend or friends like I did the previous games when I was younger, as the game is a tad bit lonely, even if the game does have some fun moments sprinkled in to keep you entertained. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and like to support the show, please consider sharing the video with a friend or checking out my Patreon link down in the description below. If you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe. And if you have any games you'd like to see me review, comment down below with any recommendations or anything else you might have to say. I read everything you guys leave for me to read. I want to just give a big thank you to my friend Thomas for donating this and many other games to the show. I'll see you all in the next video. This is Thierry Williamson, signing off.